Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Read, Write, Think, and Code with Renee and Sharon. We are so thrilled to have you here with us today because today we're going to tackle the joyous process of writing. And I even say that with a little bit of a cringe, Renee, because I remember being young thinking, holy moly, I got to go through this writing process again. But as I got older, I realized that the writing process was really great because you could learn and grow and reiterate and change through that whole process, which is exactly what I do now as a computer science and technology person. I have an idea, but I have to go back and reiterate that idea and think through it differently based on what feedback I get. So Renee and I are tackling these concepts around literacy and STEM and STEAM and how through virtual learning, we can really elevate our work around writing and literacy in STEM and STEAM, because why not? We're in a very different environment, and let's see how what our children are learning really can influence their ability to problem solve and create and innovate using the skill sets they're learning virtually. So Renee, I'm turning it over to you because you're the expert in all of this. Let's talk about what the writing process and what is the writing process these days?
Well, I can empathize with you, and that's maybe another episode, because I never considered myself a writer because I couldn't spell. Or I got held in from recess because my penmanship, my line never, my pen never met the line. So sometimes penmanship and spelling and grammar sometimes become really tunnel vision and equated with writing. And those are absolutely important parts of writing. But really, I think if I were to simplify it, writing is the process of sharing what's on your heart and your mind. And sometimes that's out loud through an auditory, like a storytelling experience, and sometimes that's on paper. And sometimes we're acting it out. And so really thinking about like composition in the biggest of terms and all the things we're doing to support the writing process. So choice, I think, is really important so that our students are engaged and want to continue and return to their writing over and over again. Just like anything else we do, it takes a lot of repetition and a lot of practice for writing. A lot. I bet you and I both, or even you watching, is, if you're writing something, yes, there's the idea of a text or an email, but if you're really thinking through something, it takes pages and pages and pages and pages of rehearsal to get to the one sentence or the one word that you want, and how we need to give ourselves permission to explore. And a lot of times in classrooms, kids don't have that time. So can we find time for kids to have time to explore and go through a lot of writing, which is why we love to break down the writing process. But first, I want to talk about that choice element, right? So all of our brains are so different. My experiences are so different from yours. And so we want to honor the unique individuality and brilliance of all the students that we work with and say, you get to write about what you want to write about. So in a sense, I won't actually ever give a kid a prompt in the noun sense. I won't hand them a piece of paper that says, write about a time you fell off your bike, because what if you didn't fall off your bike? Or write about your summer vacation, because what if you equate vacation with getting in your car and going somewhere rather than just having some off time? But what I will do instead, or what I would encourage us all to think about, is how are we prompting, the verb sense, kids to engage with their writing, get writing on the page or out loud in a way that's personal to them.
I love that.
So can I show you an example? And then
yes.
So for example, if we're staring at a blank page, so I've got all my writer's notebooks here, right, that are personalized. This is where I do all of my writing. And if I stare at the blank page, sometimes that's like, there's nothing more paralyzing.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Amen. I've done that so many times over the course of my life.
Too many times, right? Sometimes it's just helpful just to start writing, I don't know what to write. Because you know what, the writing will actually unlock itself, believe it or not. So just kind of starting with that. Here's some other examples of if we were to collect entries in our notebook, or for young writers, maybe in booklets, right? Just pieces of paper stapled together. Could we imagine, I'm willing to bet that all of you watching could think about people in your life, places in your life, and objects in your life. And right now you're shaking your head, Sharon, because I bet you have memories or stories or moments with all of them. Like I could list out my grandma, my brother, my dad, my dog. And I could think about times when, that one time my brother dared me to go down the big hill on my bike and I crashed into the tree, but he helped me. It was like the first time he showed me. So like, this is triggering in my mind, and you probably have a very different story or moment, or maybe maybe you'll pick the orange one or the pink one or the blue one to do your writing or storytelling from. And so really that's why how we honor everybody as choice. I'm not going to prompt you, but I will teach you a strategy to prompt your own heart and your mind.
Yeah. And I like that because again, I've used this word a couple of times in our episodes, but the framework. And the other word that comes to mind is parameters. So in programming, we have to tell the computer what to do. And in many times with the computer, it's a choice because we're going to tell the computer what we want it to do, but we have to give it some kind of parameter. Like just kind of going free willy-nilly doesn't always work very well, right? So what you've done is you've outlined, all right, here is people, places, and objects. This is where I want you to start. And even given some examples of your mom or your grandma or your dog, and then for me, it may be a mom, a dad, a grandpa, a cat, right? That little slight differentiation is what we call in computer science variables, right? Because just like you said to me, my story is going to be a little bit different than yours. There is definitely probably going to be a similarity somewhere that crosses over, right? I talking about falling off a bike. So for me, it wasn't so much bike, but I tried to skateboard when I was younger, and good gravy, I was terrible. So I fell off so many times, and my brother would get so tickled because he, of course, nails it, right? But that's similar, maybe not falling off the bike, but I have something in a similar fashion. So a bike is the variable in your story, whereas a skateboard is the variable in mine. And just having that conversation gets kids to start understanding that it's a placeholder. And then that's what you use when you're inputting information into the computer.
And hearing you think about, like falling off your skateboard and falling off my bike, it also reminds me of the framework of story in general. Not every story has the same parts, but a lot of them they have archetypical design, right? And, there are people, there are places, usually those people want something, something vents them, right? Conflict, tension makes kind of a good story. And then we learn something from them, either they get it in the end or not. So that archetypical design is kind of what brings universality to story, which is why we're all hardwired for it. And we like to hear one another's stories, and we're connected through a story. Oh, you fell off your skateboard one time, I fell off my bike, and that's that's common.
And actually how you think about that, that's how even, when you were talking about that, I'm thinking about all the 999 different romantic comedies that I've watched over the years, and I'm like, it's the same general story with a little bit of a quirk here and there, but somehow we go back because one, there is a parameter or a structure that keeps us, that we like. As humans, we like to have some structure around what we're doing. So just like what you're saying with that writing process, once you can find your groove around that writing process, you really can start generating some great content.
It's so true, because your brain, our brain is incredible, right? And it's always kind of shifting and changing. And so it can only take in so much new at a time. So when we start the year as teachers or even as caregivers at home, and if we're introducing a process like this, the first time we're teaching kids to go through the process, it really is to spotlight the process. Like we hope they write an okay story, or we hope they write an okay how-to book. But I really want, because that process breaks down the complex act of writing into manageable steps, we as teachers and students feel successful in each, because we know I'm just teaching planning here, or I'm just teaching how to focus, or I'm just teaching elaboration here. So it keeps our teaching from being scattered and really has that depth and clarity to it. And then kids also know it's like success criteria for them. Okay, I know I'm working on the planning today, or I know I'm working on elaboration. And it might be day by day at first, but then you're encouraging kids to make that process their own and kind of throw them in their metaphorical backpack. So when they see a blank page when we're not around, they'll pull on and draw on those strategies that we've taught them explicitly throughout the process in the classroom.
So let me ask you this question. If you were getting ready to launch this, the writing process, and you're teaching virtually, would you give them all three choices of choosing a story of places, people, or objects, or would you maybe just start with one?
It's a great question.
What would be your advice on that?
Yeah, I think it depends on your comfort zone, the teacher, because as I flash this and I also flash this, right, my notebook, whatever I'm teaching, I'm going to model for kids, right? They're going to see me go step by step through it.
Gotcha.
And so if I'm newer to this, I might just take on one of these. If I'm feeling a little bit more comfortable, then I might give them all three. If I've got younger writers, I might just teach them one, or maybe we do one pen to paper and another one out loud.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. Mm-hmm.
You know, like just kind of varying how we're experiencing it. And the idea that once you teach kids how to collect or generate or initiate ideas, it doesn't matter if we're writing a poetry unit, a how-to unit, a memoir unit, an essay unit. It all kind of stems from getting some work down, just getting your pages of your notebook started or getting booklets for younger kids started. And once I've got that entry going, I can look back at it and like even like 5 months from now and say, oh, I think I can turn that into a poem, or that time the time I fell off my bike was a story, but now I think I can revisit it as a poem. I could create a research, I can do like a interesting research unit on the aerodynamics of bikes. I don't know, I'm making that up. But like all of your writing can be revisited depending on the purpose, which is why sometimes getting started is so hard. But yeah, I would teach kids probably a different, varying the structures and varying how they experience it, because you want that to become automatic, because you can't shape a blank page. You got to have something on the page to shape.
So I just had this thought. Okay. So when you just mentioned about the bike, and then you said something about the aerodynamics of the bike. Okay. So you could totally have them write a story about a bike, right? And then have them think about how would they make that bike better? Like, how would you do it so you wouldn't fall off the bike again the next time, right? Is that working on balance? Is that adding in magic pedals that come out and, like go gadget pedals that come down and, stop you before you fall off? Or is it, I don't know, but that would start to me that process, and then immediately correlates into the STEM concept of innovating, understanding there's a story around, because let me be very honest with you, almost every successful product has solved a problem. I mean, every product. So if there's something that's happened, a new product has come on to the scene to help solve that problem. So if it's fallen off a bike, I mean, I'm thinking training wheels was probably what was initially put in there to help you learn your balance, right? That to me is an easy transition from writing, going through the writing process, and then potentially thinking about, well, how can we make that bike better?
And, so I'm imagining, and inherently in plot work, so we're talking about a specific text type, right? So in narrative or in story, not every storyline, not every plot line, but usually there is a problem and solution. It's pretty typical. But it does make me think about, as a writer, what are the what if scenarios that, like, when we put a character through roadblocks, it's intentional, right? Because they're going to learn something about themselves. So even from a personal narrative, I can look back at that story between my brother and I, and what did I learn? And then the flip side of that is, as a reader, we know that characters are being developed by the author to endure or face a roadblock. And we learn the most about a character of what they do when they encounter trouble. And so that's that what if, or that if then scenario, the author is baiting us to think about a little bit when we grow theories and big ideas from text we read.
And that's called a conditional statement in programming, when we think about, if we do this, then. And the other thing that will happen too with conditional statements is, if, and we could think about this too personally, like for me, I have a certain genre or theme that I like to read or follow. Like I said, romantic comedies, right? On the computer, you can use conditional statements to help figure out what your audience likes, what you like, what drives a character. If they do this, then all of that is decision making. It's conditional statements. And we're doing that all the time anyway, right? So one thing I was thinking too, that we mentioned, you and I had a conversation about, like, once you write, it's good to read it aloud or let somebody else read it so that you know what they like and how you can respond and either repeat what they liked or take out what they didn't like.
When we as writers receive a reaction from an audience, it's super important not only to our revision loop, is that the reaction that I wanted, but also I think it's engaging. Our writing almost becomes a gift to someone. And when we get that positive feedback of someone, like, we actually came up with an idea, we planned it out, then we wrote it out and read it aloud or gave it to somebody, and somebody reacted, and that's pretty remarkable, like goosebumps remarkable. I think students will, myself included, will want to come back to the writing process again, because many parents and teachers will often say, but our kids can't write, or our kids don't write, air quotes. And I want to kibosh that, right? I think that's a myth. I think it's that those kids, perhaps like me and you and I, perhaps had not so great writing experiences. Like I didn't have an answer to the prompt that was given to me, or my penmanship wasn't up to par, or
oh my gosh, yeah.
Work. But if you imagine like flipping that and saying, yeah, again, there's a time and place for spelling and penmanship, but what we're saying is, let's not let that be the roadblock. Let's
Correct.
remove that temporarily and let kids like conceptualize and tap into their own lives and tell those stories and tell those all abouts. That's where I think is going to keep them coming back and again and again and again, because they have that sense of, I'm writing for my grandma, or I'm writing for, the neighbor next door, or I'm writing for, my bus driver, whoever. I think that's really powerful life work too.
I agree. And especially during this time of a lot of change and uncertainty, et cetera, being able to choose and have something that's really relevant to you, I think will go a long way for our students. So to recap a little bit, our conversation about writing and that process is to think about giving children choice on what they write about based on a variable, people, places, objects, giving them the option to create that content and still walk through the process of brainstorming and writing down ideas. And then, I'm sure I'm even saying all of this right, but then you reiterate that piece, have people read along the way, let them embrace that choice and see where it takes them. I think that's pretty cool.
It's really cool. And then that process becomes automated, right? And I don't know if this feels appropriate, but I'm going to show, can you see that slide, Sharon?
Yes.
So this is a process that we take young writers through, and I'll also include this link in the video and one for older writers too. But this cyclical process is what writers do almost on a daily process. And like our JKs, our Kinders are 1 and 2, they're making books almost every day. And that process becomes automated so that whether you're in a poetry unit or a story unit or a how-to unit or an informational unit, could you imagine that once they understand the steps of this process, we can, like, the sky is the limit in terms of possibility of them producing different kinds of writing. And then we also have an upper grade process too. The upper grade process is a little bit different. This sticky note the sticky note chart represents a planning exercise we conducted with a team of teachers. And this would represent typically readers and writers in grades 3, 4, 5, all the way up through high school. Most of our units of study are about 15 to 20 days. And you can see by the different color code and the label on those sticky notes is that every day I have my teaching is in a little bit of a different stage of the process. So it really helps me break down something complex into manageable steps, keeps my teaching lean, right? Really explicit. So my teaching doesn't get watered down or lost in like an overview or a summary. And students then, when they get to know this process, and in fact, I'll show you the picture behind it. A lot of times teachers represent the process visually in their classrooms in brick and mortar, but you can also create, this visually, virtually, and send them like a photograph of this. They see like first of all, the I'm done syndromes don't happen, right? Because you see all the days that we have ahead of us in the calendar. And they also can manage it. Like, okay, I'm in the collecting phase, and I know my job right now is to collect as many ideas as I can. And can you imagine just feeling okay with, I'm an idea collector today, not, I have to write a published piece, or I have to worry about my spelling or revising. I'm an idea collector today, and that's all I've got to do. It really feels manageable. And so like the kids of Renee doesn't write, or Sharon doesn't write. She can. We all do. We all write. We all tell stories. Mm-hmm. We all, go through processes throughout our day. But I think giving kids choice and having a process to follow will increase engagement with the writing.
I completely agree. So as we wrap it up, think about this. Creating that framework that has a simplicity and a parameter around it, giving the students a choice to think through what they're writing, which opens them up to understanding about different conditions, different variables, the process of writing a story in your head, taking that process of collecting data, or collecting ideas, and then working through ones that really begin to resonate with you. Reading it aloud, sharing with others. All of those pieces will go back to really enhancing their reading skills, their writing skills, and then being able to apply that to a hands-on experience, whatever that may be. So we thank you so much. Renee is going to post all of this in the notes section of the video so that you can check it out. And we can't wait to see you on another episode of Read, Write, Think, and Code with Renee and Sharon.